In this video, I'm breaking down 9 Asperger's symptoms in adults so that by the end of the video, you'll know exactly how to spot it. Coming up. Hey, welcome to the Asper world. My name is Dan. I have Asperger's syndrome, ADHD, OCD, and dyslexia. I make weekly videos on this type of content, so if you've just stumbled across this video by accident looking for information and you'd like to learn more, consider subscribing to learn more about this stuff every week. Also, make sure to hit that subscribe button bell because you won't know when I upload videos otherwise. Oh, and if you're watching over on Facebook, make sure to give this page a like and a follow to see daily videos from me. So in this video, I'm covering 9 traits of autism that you probably haven't really realized that are part of Asperger's syndrome when you have come into contact with somebody who displays these type of behaviors. Hey guys, what's good? Welcome back to another video. I love doing these type of videos. It's really fun. I haven't done one like this for a while and I'm super pumped to be here today. It's awesome. It's March. I'm getting ready for all kinds of stuff. I've got autism shows coming up. It's going to be awesome. Everything you need to know will be on theasperworld.com if you want to know more about those shows where I'm coming up to do talks and meet and greets and stuff like that. But anyway, on with this video. Before we get started, I just want to ask you a simple question. Are you watching this video on a mobile device like a tablet or like a cell phone or something? Or are you watching this on a computer? Please pop it in a comment down below because I read and respond to every single comment. So if you do that, we'll have a conversation and it'll be awesome. Here are the 9 Asperger's symptoms in adults. Here we go. Okay, so number 1, really important, is eye contact. Now, people on the autism spectrum have issues with eye contact typically. Now, this goes for people with Asperger's syndrome where they have a difficulty in creating eye contact and then maintaining that eye contact if they do create eye contact. This is almost like a personal space issue or a social convention issue that is never really taught to anybody, that you're supposed to look someone in the eyes a certain way or look someone in the eyes, period. You know, these are things that people on the autism spectrum find difficult, and it's not something that comes naturally. You know, nobody naturally wants to just stare into somebody's eyes. It's a learned behavior from a social construct. So people who have Asperger's syndrome actually find this super difficult to do. I myself have vast amounts of difficulty in looking people directly in the eyes and then maintaining that eye contact. One of the things is if I know someone really well, or if they're my family member, I can make eye contact with them, but I can't maintain it for a long period of time. It becomes very awkward. Almost like somebody's reaching inside my soul and touching my brain. It's like, oh, it's really weird. I can't really describe properly how that feels. I did a video all about eye contact actually, and I'll try and leave it in a link above here if I remember, which I should do. And then you guys can check that out on the card above. It's all about eye contact and autism specifically, but this is one of the main traits. One of the things that you probably notice first off the bat when somebody is talking to someone, if you are neurotypical and you're talking to somebody who is on the spectrum, then they are not making eye contact. You know, this is something very common between most people. But this isn't to say that every single person on the autism spectrum doesn't look people in the eyes. Actually, a lot of people do look people in the eyes and they are comfortable with that because they've been able to teach themselves this learnt behavior, which is absolutely fine. But it's just something that is quite apparent, and I'd say is a very common trait of Asperger's syndrome. Okay, number 2 is a type of something called stimming. Now, stimming stands for self-stimulatory behavior, but typically in Asperger's syndrome, what we tend to see is people rocking backwards and forwards on the chair when they're trying to get into a movie, or when they're trying to get into reading research, or when they're focusing on a movie, or something like completely takes their focus. They start rocking with backwards and forwards, which is a self-stimulatory behavioral type of soothing type of behavior. And so stimming comes in many forms. But what's quite apparently common in Asperger's syndrome is the ability to rock, and this behavior could be seen actually with hand flapping as well. But hand flapping is a completely interesting subject, and I just did a video on that last week. But in terms of this one, I'm talking about just rocking backwards and forwards because it's one of those ones that are kind of like, it's so slight that if you just see it on its own, you don't really notice it. But when you see it combined with all the other ones, like the eye contact and the rest that I've got here in this list, then you'll be able to begin to build a picture in your head where you think, okay, well, this person may be on the autism spectrum because they're displaying these type of behaviors. And I do it myself. You know, I rock backwards and forwards. I actually rock side to side when I'm kind of concentrating on conversations. And it's very difficult to not do that because I don't realize I'm actually doing it. One of the things about it is that it's not actively thought. You don't sit there actively thinking, okay, I'm going to rock backwards and forwards. It kind of just happens, especially when you get really into something very focused and hyper focused, which is another trait. But the rocking backwards and forwards, it has been seen by people like Bill Gates as well, who are suspected on the spectrum, and people like Nikola Tesla, who are also rumored to be on the spectrum. So it's very, very common in Asperger's syndrome, and I have personal experience with this. So check it out. Eye contact and rocking, very, very common, very, very easy to figure out if somebody could potentially be on the spectrum. Okay, so number 3 is obsessive interest. Now, this is a good one because I love talking about my obsessive interest, but people on the autism spectrum typically have an obsessive interest that they just go full pelt with, and that they just get so indulged with. They love it. They'll get everything there is to know about it. One of my specific interests is Fight Club. I've got Fight Club t-shirts. I've got Fight Club, the script signed by the cast. I've got the DVDs. I've got different variations of the DVDs. I've got the comic book series that came out for Fight Club 2. I've got everything think of. I know all the trivia about it, and I love it. I think it's fantastic, and I could talk to you for hours about Fight Club. But that's me and my specific interest. I also have a bunch of different ones, but people on the autism spectrum tend to have specific interests. Sometimes they will jump from one specific interest to another specific interest, which can happen. But a lot of the time they will have one that really shines through. And that one for me, the one that really shines through for me all the time is alien conspiracies. Like I just told you, I spoke a lot about Fight Club. Nothing comes close to my alien conspiracies. And I just love all that kind of stuff. So that is my specific interest. Now, you may find someone on the spectrum will have their bedroom or their office or whatever decked out with everything that they absolutely love about that subject, and they could talk to you about it for hours, and they pretty much probably spend all of their time, their spare time, researching that specific topic that they love. And I guess there's nothing wrong with that. And you know, the funny thing about obsessive interest is I actually designed a course that shows people how to turn obsessive interests into a career, which is exactly what I did, because I love YouTube and I find it fascinating, and I turn it into my career. So I always think that there's potential there for someone to just do more with obsessive interest rather than just collect memorabilia. Actually, if you want access to that course, I have it on my Patreon page, and you can subscribe down below. So check out Patreon, patreon.com/theaspieworld, and you'll get access. There's actually a bunch of other courses on there as well, but specifically how to turn obsessive interests into a career, which I know a lot of people struggle with, is on my Patreon page. So yeah, definitely check that out. So obsessive interests are something that are greatly associated with autism, and someone who could talk for hours about their obsessive interests, just talk and talk and talk and talk, and then you're thinking, my goodness, is this person ever going to stop talking? And no, they will talk for hours and hours about their obsessive interest because they love it, and that's a good thing, and I love it, and I salute it. Awesome. You're awesome. You're awesome. If you're autistic and you're watching this, you're awesome. Okay, number 4 is a very, very interesting one. This one is the love of routines. Now, people on the autism spectrum love order and routine. They love having stuff that they know they're going to do in a certain fashion, in a certain order, because they're used to it. It's comfortable, it's relaxing, it's homely, it's feeling relaxed, and you get it, you know, you get that, yeah, it's an awesome feeling. So people on the autism spectrum typically have a love for routines. They'll get up every day the same way. You know, they'll do their bathroom routine in the same way. They'll do their morning routine, like getting their breakfast ready or getting their clothes on in a certain fashion, and they'll come down and do that, and they love that pattern of routine because patterns are comfortable, because patterns relate to the problem solving ability of mathematics, because when you can look at a perfect pattern, it's like you've solved a perfect solution to a problem. And that pattern and that maths, it's kind of very, very calming and soothing for someone on the spectrum, and I love my routines. I'm actually going to do a video on my morning routine. I did a video all about my daily routine, and that was super fun to film because I got to show people an insight into like how I do my daily routines and stuff. And in terms of how I do my morning routine, I'm going to do a video on that next week. But I really love my routines, and I follow my routines and my structure. And the problem with it is that if it goes out of whack, then you have the potential for meltdowns, and that's not good. You know, I'm going to be doing a video all about meltdowns very, very soon. But in terms of, you know, swaying from your routine, you could see someone on the spectrum who would have an awesome routine, but then they'd sway from that because of a bump in the road, and they become very agitated, upset, anxious, and worried about the situation because they're no longer following their path of routine, and that's not a good thing. It's difficult for them to deal with. So this is something to really think about when someone's on the spectrum. Their love of routines is something that's quite paramount, and you'll know they'll love it. And they may even wear the same clothes. I wear the same clothes all the time. Well, not the same set of clothes. I have like loads of versions of the same clothes, and I wear the same ones because I love those, and it's very minimal, and it makes me calm and soothed. I actually had to get rid of a bunch of t-shirts I had because I had like logos on the front of them, and they were quite wild logos, and they were making me really hyperactive, and I couldn't concentrate. So I had to get rid of those, and that's why I wear quite plain clothes, and I love plain clothes, so that's awesome. Okay, here we go. Number 5, a lack of social understanding. Now, people with Asperger's syndrome typically have a lack of social convention understanding, where, you're in a group of people and it's how close to stand to another person, how to understand body language with like gestures and hand gestures and things like that, and facial expressions, and how people say things sarcastically or jokingly. And the person with an autism spectrum condition like Asperger's syndrome may not know if the person's joking or not. They'll take them at face value because it's hard to read between the lines of social conventions and social understanding, because these are unwritten rules that we all like grow up learning being around social environments if your brain is wired neurotypically. But for people who are autistic, it's very difficult to grasp those concepts as you're developing as a teenager, because you're focusing on all the other stuff that's super difficult, like dealing with all the sensory issues and everything else that's going on around you in your life. It's difficult. So actually having a social understanding of social conventions in social situations is super difficult and can actually cause a lot of stress and upset, because sometimes, I've been in like a store, a supermarket, and I'm talking to a guy, and then, the cashier, and then he tries to make a joke, and I think he's being really weird, and then he thinks he's trying to be funny, and then we fall out. It's not a good thing. But in terms of social understanding, it's noticing when someone doesn't really know how to be in a social situation. Like, it's difficult to make small talk. People talk about the weather and all this kind of rubbish, and they're thinking, well, how do they know what to talk about when they're around other people? This is very difficult for someone on the autism spectrum, and can be very confusing for them as well. So I feel like having, understanding that someone would have difficulties with social situations is a good indicator that they may be on the autism spectrum. Okay, be it that someone could have social issues and not be on the autism spectrum, but typically if you're looking at this observationally and you're seeing like all these patterns, if it's your kid or your brother or your boyfriend or whatever, or your partner, whatever it is, right? You might be able to line these up and go, oh, okay, I figure out what's going on here. So that's why I wanted to put that one in there about the lack of social understanding, because I think it's very important, and it's a big one, because it falls under the triad of impairment as well, which is like the classic 3 ways of knowing if someone's on the spectrum when they go diagnose, and they have this like typical kind of pointers that they hit. So that's that. Okay. Guys, this is super important. If you think this video is valuable and it can help other people, please share this video link on your Facebook and Twitter pages, because the more people we can reach with this video and help, the better they have at achieving their goals as an autistic person. So please do that. Sharing is caring, and I love to share. So please go share it on Facebook and Twitter right now, and then watch the rest of the video. Oh man, we're getting through these. We're shooting through them. Woo! Gotta hydrate myself. Doing these videos. Gotta stay hydrated, yo. Okay, number 6 is an interesting one. This is voice volume. Now, people on the autism spectrum typically don't have control over the volume of their voice. I've been practicing this for ages and I still don't have control of the volume of my voice. My girlfriend always says that I'm shouting. Whatever I do, she says I'm shouting. My parents used to call me the whirlwind because I'd come in like 1,000 miles an hour because of my ADHD, and like, and from school, throw my bag down and like just, start talking away about my subject really loud, and they'd be like, Dan, why are you so loud? I don't feel like I'm loud, but everybody else around me says I'm really, really loud. So having a no control over your voice volume is an epic trait of Asperger's syndrome. Like, typically this comes hand in hand, because everybody knows someone on the autism spectrum who has that issue of knowing if they're speaking loud or quiet, and I try my best, I really do. But still, practice makes progress, and I'm still trying to make sure that I figure out my voice volume and make sure that I can do all of those things like talk, typically, I guess. But anyway, voice volume, very, very interesting. Definitely think about this when you're dealing with somebody that potentially is on the spectrum. Okay, number 7 is an interesting one, and I always have this issue, like I mentioned before in the other one for the social conventions one, right? This is not understanding jokes. People on the autism spectrum have a huge issue with understanding jokes, because typically they take the world at face value. So we're taking everything as it literally is. The literal sense of everything is how the world is presented to an autistic brain. So I have real issues with this. When people who I don't know are trying to make jokes about something, I'll take it very, very seriously. And so it kind of gets me into all kinds of situations where I'm like, oh goodness me, how did I not know this? Or how did I not figure this out? Or, and then say, oh, the person was joking. And I'm like, well, I didn't know that. And everyone's like, oh yeah, he's joking. So not understanding jokes, like sarcasm, is lost on me unless, and this is an exception, unless you're like my best friend or my girlfriend, and I know when you're joking about because we've done it a million times. But if I've if we're just hanging out in a group of people and someone's being sarcastic, I have no idea. Sometimes I don't even know if someone's angry or sad when they're talking to me. I'm like, or happy or whatever, I'm just like, what kind of tone is this in? It's really difficult to grasp that because people are so unpredictable, and that unpredictability is something that we cannot grasp on the autism spectrum. And like knowing someone's intentions, like just guessing someone's intentions, never going to happen. I might as well say goodbye. That's never going to happen. So yeah, not understanding jokes, very interesting. And it's very notable when you know someone who's like that. You're like, huh. Okay, number 8. Oh man, we're pacing through these. Okay, right. Number 8 is social anxiety, right? So people on the autism spectrum with Aspergers syndrome have social anxiety. They suffer from social anxiety. They have issues in social situations, mainly because of the fact that we just said that, you know, social conventions, jokes, things like that, these are hard concepts to grasp for someone on the autism spectrum, and it can be very difficult for them to feel comfortable in that environment, in that situation at that time. So social anxiety is very much a byproduct of all the other kind of traits that are coming into play here in this condition. And so when you're thinking about it and you know someone who's like got most of those and that social anxiety, then you're thinking, oh my goodness, you know, this is why. And it's a shame because social anxiety actually stops me doing a load of things in my life, and I wish that I could just get rid of it, but there's nothing I can do about it. And it makes me socially inept because I can't go out and do those things. I can't go out and sit in a city and have a cup of tea in the middle of a busy city. Those things can't happen. I wish they could, and it literally breaks my heart that I can't do that. So yeah, it's crazy. Oh guys, big thumbs up if you can relate to any of this that I'm talking about right now, because if you're enjoying this video, please give it a thumbs up. There's like a little box underneath this video with like a little tick thing, so if you can give it a tick. I always try to get my videos past 400 likes because that'd be amazing. It just shows me how much you guys love me and you love this type of video. So please give it a thumbs up if you can. That would help me out so much. Thank you so much. Okay, so the final one, drum roll please. That's a terrible drum roll. Okay, drum roll please. Okay, that's terrible. The last one is the oversensitivity to things like sound, sight, food textures. Like, basically, people on the autism spectrum comorbidly, like co-occurringly, have a condition called sensory processing disorder. This basically means that they are hypersensitive or sometimes undersensitive to sight, smell, textures, all that kind of stuff. This sensitivity comes into play with all kinds of things. So like, you know, if you're eating foods and there's different like textures of foods on a plate, a person on the autism spectrum may have a difficulty having all of those on the plate at the same time. So they might want like their greens in one bowl, they might want their carbs in another bowl, and they might want gravy in another bowl, and they kind of like just eat it, willy-nilly or just one-on-one. There's all different types because it's always, to the person, the sensitivity to the personal identification of that person and what they identify with in terms of like, do they like this type of food, whatever. So in terms of that, food textures are a big one. For me, light and sounds are a big one as well, because like we're oversensitive to light, so we can see lights brighter and like they flicker and stuff like that. And so there are a bunch of different kind of like over and undersensitive traits that go with autism, because it always co-occurs with autism. It's pretty much everybody with autism has a sensory processing disorder, whether they, if it's a type of clothes that they wear, it could be just feeling like the seam on clothes like socks or like your t-shirts and stuff. This is very, very interesting. And there's actually a way you can get around kind of like treating sensory processing disorder as well, which I did a video all about, like sensory processing disorder hacks and stuff, which is really cool. And I'll try and leave that in a link above here as well. And I know I'm overloading you guys with loads of videos, but I'm just trying to give you guys as much content as possible, so please check them out. I'll leave anything that I'm talking about video wise in the description below, and there's also a bunch of like autism must-haves there as well, so if you want to check out those things like chewy toys or whatever, then yeah, check them out. It'll be super awesome. But oversensitive and undersensitive to things, super interesting, very, very common on the autism spectrum, and you'll probably know an autistic person who has pretty much all these things I'm talking about in this video here. Guys, if you enjoyed this video, please remember to subscribe to this channel and also check out my next video here, and I'll see you next time, guys. Peace.